Hey, welcome. This is just a brief video explaining hexagonal thinking as a discussion technique to use with students in any content area. So the idea is that I give students a deck of terms, concepts, and allow them to arrange those visually to represent the relationships that they see between the different terms and concepts. And it's typically a group exercise or in pairs. It's great because no student group is going to produce the same exact configuration and see the same relationships between the terms. So you see unique relationships that the students come up with and they get to explain them. So there's two different ways that you could present this to students. One is you could list the terms on these hexagons ahead of time. So this one could say Reconstruction era, this one could say Battle of Gettysburg, Abraham Lincoln. You get the idea. So I write those out ahead of time. Then I let students make a copy of this Google slide file. Then the students, either in pairs or in groups, would start to arrange. And I would say, don't just stop at your first way of setting it up. Rearrange and debate and continue to have discussions until you end up with the best, what you think is the best possible way that these ideas or concepts could relate to each other. So they get to keep discussing and moving around. Kids are going to have different roles. Maybe one is doing more of the listening and moving, and others are leading the discussion. And then when they are finished, they can identify key relationships. So there's going to be obviously many, many connections with this amount of six-sided shapes connecting to each other that they could explain, but they're going to pick key ones to explain. So I moved that number over number 1. You could give them more or less, so you could have them explain 6 connections or 2 connections or 3 connections. But once they've identified those, they could use this slide to just type out, explain your thinking for this connection. So they could type it there as a group. You could have them present it orally. You could have them record it with a tool like Flipgrid, say if you're asynchronous. A lot of different ways that you could have them present and explain those connections. But that's a great way to grade the assignment, is by looking at the explanations of those key connections. Because again, everyone's going to have a different configuration of this, so it's not like we can grade it by did they get it exactly the way that it's quote unquote supposed to be. There's another different slight variation where you have the hexagons prearranged and they aren't dragging the hexagons, but they are just dragging and dropping terms. So I would write a term bank, instead of term 1, like I said, it's going to say Reconstruction era or something else, and they just drag them here. But otherwise it works the same way. They just can drag and drop. They can rearrange if they decide they didn't like it the first way they set it up, and they can still use these circles to highlight key connections and then explain them. And that's pretty much it. Hope you enjoyed the video. It's a great technique. Have a good one.